Marcus Williams pushed his cleaning cart down the long hallway of the big office building. The wheels made a soft rolling sound on the shiny floor. It was 11 o'clock at night, and most people had gone home hours ago. The building was quiet and peaceful. Only a few lights were still on in some offices where people worked late. Marcus liked working at night. During the day, the building was full of busy people in expensive suits. They walked fast and talked on their phones. They never looked at him. To them, he was just the cleaning man. But at night, the building belonged to him. He could work at his own speed and think about things without anyone bothering him. He had been working here for 3 years now. 3 long years of cleaning offices, emptying trash cans and mopping floors. It was not the life he had planned for himself, but it was the life he had now. And he was grateful for it, even if it was hard work that paid very little money. Marcus stopped at the elevator and pressed the button. While he waited, he looked at his reflection in the shiny metal doors. He saw a tired man with kind eyes and calloused hands. His uniform was clean but old. His name tag said Marcus W. in simple black letters. He was 34 years old, but sometimes he felt much older. The elevator came, and Marcus pushed his cart inside. He pressed the button for the 15th floor. As the elevator went up, he thought about his daughter Emma. She was 8 years old and the most important thing in his life. Right now, she was sleeping at Mrs. Chun's apartment next door to theirs. Mrs. Chun was an old lady who helped take care of Emma when Marcus worked his night shift. Emma was a smart little girl with big brown eyes and a beautiful smile. She loved to draw pictures and read books. She also loved music, just like her father did. Marcus had bought her a small keyboard for her birthday last year. It was not expensive, but Emma played it every day after school. Sometimes she played simple songs that Marcus taught her. Music had been Marcus's first love long before Emma was born. When he was young, he had dreamed of being a professional piano player. He had studied music in college and was very good at it. His teachers said he had real talent. They said he could go far if he worked hard, but life had other plans for Marcus. When he was 26, his girlfriend Lisa got pregnant. They were both happy about having a baby. They made plans to get married after the baby was born. Marcus was going to finish his music degree, and Lisa was going to be a teacher. They had it all figured out, then everything changed in one terrible night. Lisa was driving home from work when another car ran a red light and hit her. The doctors tried to save both Lisa and the baby, but only Emma survived. Marcus found himself alone with a tiny baby girl and no idea how to take care of her. The hospital bills were huge. Marcus had to drop out of college to work full-time. He took any job he could find to pay for Emma's needs. First he worked at a restaurant, then at a store, and finally he got the job cleaning offices. It was steady work with health insurance, which Emma needed for her regular check-ups. Marcus finished cleaning the 15th floor and moved his cart to the 16th floor. This floor had the fancy conference rooms where important meetings happened. The rooms had big tables made of dark wood and comfortable leather chairs. There were large windows that showed the city lights far below. As Marcus cleaned, he sometimes hummed quietly to himself. Usually it was classical music, pieces by Mozart or Chopin that he had learned years ago. Music was still in his heart, even though he rarely had time to play piano anymore. Sometimes late at night, when Emma was asleep, he would sit at her little keyboard and play very softly. But it was not the same as playing a real piano. Marcus had not played a real piano in almost 8 years. He missed the feel of the keys under his fingers. He missed the way the music could fill a room and touch people's hearts. But those days were gone now. Now he was just a janitor who hummed old songs while he worked. The building where Marcus worked was called Meridian Corporate Tower. It was 40 stories tall and full of successful business people who made more money in one day than Marcus made in a month. The company that owned most of the building was run by a woman named Sarah Chun. Marcus had seen her picture in the lobby, but he had never met her. She was important, and he was just the night janitor. Marcus moved to the next office and began emptying the trash can. Inside he found papers covered with numbers and charts. These people made decisions that affected thousands of workers and millions of dollars. Marcus thought about how different their lives were from his. They went home to big houses and nice cars. He went home to a small apartment where he had to be quiet so he would not wake Emma, but Marcus was not bitter about his life. He had Emma, and she was worth everything. Every sacrifice he made was for her. Every long night of work was so she could have a better life than he did. He wanted her to go to college and follow her dreams. He wanted her to have choices that he never had. As Marcus worked, he thought about Emma's piano lesson that week. She was learning a new song and she was so excited about it. The teacher said Emma had good musical sense, just like her father. Marcus smiled when he thought about this. Maybe Emma would be the musician in the family? Maybe she would achieve the dreams that he had to give up. The night passed slowly as Marcus cleaned office after office. He dusted desks and computers. He vacuumed carpets and cleaned windows. He made sure everything was perfect for the people who would come to work in the morning. They would never know that Marcus had been there, making their workplace clean and comfortable. By 6 in the morning, Marcus was tired but finished with his work. He put his cleaning supplies away and got ready to go home. Soon Emma would wake up and he would make her breakfast before she went to school. Then he would try to sleep for a few hours before starting another night of work. Marcus walked out of the building into the early morning air. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky with soft colors. He walked to the bus stop where he would catch the bus home to Emma. As he waited, he hummed a gentle melody, a lullaby that he used to sing to Emma when she was a baby. Marcus did not know that his life was about to change in ways he could never imagine. He did not know that music would soon bring him back into the light. For now, he was just a tired father going home to his daughter, carrying his dreams quietly in his heart like a secret song. The next night, Marcus arrived at work as usual. He clocked in at 11 o'clock and got his cleaning cart ready. Tonight felt different somehow. There was more activity in the building than normal. Some offices still had lights on, and he could hear voices coming from the upper floors. Marcus learned from the security guard that the company was having a big party tomorrow night. It was their quarterly celebration, where all the important people came together to talk about business and eat fancy food. The guard told Marcus that they had been setting up all day for the event. Marcus started his cleaning routine on the lower floors. As he worked, he noticed that many offices had flowers and decorations. Someone had put up banners with the company logo. Even the hallways looked more polished than usual. The whole building seemed to be getting ready for something special. When Marcus reached the 15th floor, he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. The big conference room at the end of the hall had been completely changed. The long wooden table and chairs were gone. Instead, there were small round tables, with white tablecloths and pretty centerpieces. Soft lights hung from the ceiling, making everything look elegant and warm. But what caught Marcus's attention was not the tables or the lights. In the corner of the room sat a beautiful black piano. It was a grand piano, the kind that professional musicians played in concert halls. The top was open, showing the strings inside. Even from the hallway, Marcus could see how the light reflected off its shiny surface. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. He had not seen a piano like this in years. Not since his college days when he spent hours practicing in the music building. This piano looked expensive and well cared for. Someone had polished it until it gleamed like a mirror. Marcus pushed his cart closer to get a better look. The conference room had glass walls, so he could see everything inside clearly. He wondered why they had brought a piano for a business party. Maybe they were going to have live music during the event. Maybe some famous musician was coming to play for all the important guests. As Marcus began cleaning the offices near the conference room, he found himself looking at the piano again and again. His fingers tingled as he remembered what it felt like to play. He could almost hear the music in his mind, the rich, deep sounds that only a good piano could make. Marcus knew he should not go into the conference room. It was set up for tomorrow's party, and he was not supposed to touch anything. But the piano called to him like an old friend. He had been away from music for so long, and here was this beautiful instrument just sitting there, Waiting. Marcus looked around to make sure no one was watching. The floor was empty except for him. He could hear the security guard talking on his radio somewhere far away. Slowly, Marcus opened the door to the conference room and stepped inside. The room smelled like fresh flowers and new carpet. Everything was perfect and clean, ready for the important people who would come tomorrow. Marcus felt out of place in his janitor uniform, but he could not stay away from the piano. He walked over to the instrument and stood beside it. Up close, he could see that it was even more beautiful than he had thought. The wood was dark and smooth, with no scratches or marks. The keys were white as snow and perfectly aligned. This was not just any piano. This was a professional instrument worth more money than Marcus made in several years. Marcus looked at the keys and remembered the first time he had played piano as a child. His mother had saved up for months to buy him lessons. She worked 2 jobs to pay for them, just like Marcus worked hard now to take care of Emma. Music had been his escape then, just like it was his comfort now during the long, quiet nights. Without thinking, Marcus reached out and gently touched one of the keys. He did not press it down. He just felt the smooth surface under his finger. It brought back so many memories. He remembered playing for his college friends, playing for Lisa when they were dating, playing lullabies for baby Emma. Marcus pulled his hand back quickly. He should not be touching the piano. It was not his to play. He was just the janitor, and this piano was for the party guests. Important people who wore expensive clothes and made important decisions. People who belonged in rooms like this. But as Marcus started to walk away, he heard something that made him freeze. From somewhere in the building came the faint sound of classical music. It was coming from a radio or computer, and it was playing one of his favorite pieces, a nocturne by Chopin. The same piece he had learned to play perfectly years ago. Marcus closed his eyes and listened. In his mind, he could see his fingers moving across the keys, playing each note with feeling and skill. He remembered how the music had made people smile and sometimes cry. He remembered how it felt to create something beautiful that touched other people's hearts. The music stopped, and Marcus opened his eyes. He was still standing in the conference room next to the piano. For a moment, he had forgotten where he was and what he was supposed to be doing. He looked at his cleaning cart waiting in the hallway and remembered that he had work to finish. Marcus walked around the piano, dusting the tables and chairs nearby. As he worked, he hummed the Chopin piece he had just heard. His humming was very quiet, but in the empty room it seemed to fill the space with gentle melody. Marcus did not know that he was not alone. 3 floors above, several young executives were working late on a big presentation for tomorrow's party. They had ordered pizza and were taking a break when one of them, Brad Morrison, looked out the window toward the conference room. Brad was 28 years old and had been working at the company for 2 years. He came from a wealthy family and had never had to work hard for anything in his life. He thought he was very funny and smart, but mostly he just liked to make jokes about other people. Brad saw Marcus in the conference room and called his friends over to the window. There were 3 other young men with him, all dressed in expensive suits even though it was late at night. They had been drinking coffee and energy drinks to stay awake, and they were feeling silly and mean. "Look at that," Brad said, pointing down at the conference room. "It's the weird janitor guy. What's he doing in there?" The others looked where Brad was pointing. They could see Marcus moving around the piano, dusting and cleaning. They watched as he stopped for a moment and seemed to be looking at the piano very carefully. "I've seen him before," said another executive named Tyler. "He's always humming. When he cleans, classical music stuff. Really weird for a janitor," Brad laughed. "Maybe he thinks he's some kind of musician. Wouldn't that be funny? A janitor who thinks he can play piano?" The group watched Marcus for a few more minutes. They saw how carefully he cleaned around the piano, how he seemed to know exactly what it was. To them, it was just funny that someone like Marcus would be interested in something as fancy as classical music. "We should do something about this tomorrow," Brad said with a mean smile, "during the party. It would be hilarious to see him try to play that piano in front of everyone." The others agreed, already imagining how embarrassing it would be for Marcus. They did not think about how cruel their idea was. They only thought about how much they would laugh. Marcus finished cleaning the conference room and moved on to the other offices. He had no idea that he was being watched. He had no idea that tomorrow night would change his life forever. He just continued his work, humming softly to himself, carrying his love of music quietly in his heart. The next evening was Friday, and the big party was finally happening. Marcus arrived at work earlier than usual because he knew the building would be busy. His supervisor had told him to stay out of the way during the party and only clean the floors that were not being used for the event. Marcus could hear music and laughter coming from the 10th floor as he worked on the lower levels. The party sounded like it was going well. Important people from the company and their guests were eating, drinking, and celebrating their successful quarter. Marcus had seen some of them arriving earlier, men and women in expensive clothes, talking and laughing as they rode the elevators. Up to the party. By 10 o'clock, Marcus had finished most of his work on the lower floors. He was pushing his cart toward the elevator when his supervisor, Mr. Rodriguez, found him. "Marcus, I need you to clean the 16th floor tonight," Mr. Rodriguez said. "The party people made a mess up there earlier when they were setting up. But be quiet about it, okay? The party is still going on next door." Marcus nodded and took the elevator up to the 16th floor. As soon as the doors opened, he could hear the party much more clearly. There was music playing and the sound of many people talking and laughing. Through the glass walls of the conference room, he could see well-dressed people holding wine glasses and eating from small plates. The piano was still there in the corner, but now someone was playing it. A woman in a black dress sat at the bench, playing soft background music while people talked. She was good, but Marcus could tell she was just playing simple pieces, the kind of music that stayed in the background and did not demand attention. Marcus began cleaning the offices on the 16th floor. Most of them were empty, but a few still had people working late or having small meetings. As he worked, he could not help but listen to the piano music. The woman was playing songs he recognized, but she was playing them very simply. Without much feeling or expression. Around 11 o'clock, the party began to wind down. Marcus could hear people saying goodbye and thank you. Some guests started leaving and the music got quieter. The woman at the piano played a few more songs and then stopped. Marcus watched through the glass as she closed the piano and gathered her things. By 11:30, most of the guests had left. Only a few groups of people remained, mostly young executives who had been drinking wine and did not want the party to end. Marcus could see them through the glass walls, still talking and laughing loudly. Marcus was cleaning an office near the conference room when he heard footsteps in the hallway. He looked up and saw Brad Morrison walking toward him with 3 other young men. They were all a little drunk from the party, and they had the kind of confident, mean look that made Marcus nervous. Brad stopped in front of Marcus and smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Hey there, Marcus. How's the cleaning going tonight?" Marcus was surprised that Brad knew his name. He had never talked to any of these executives before. "It's going fine, sir. Thank you for asking. We saw you looking at the piano last night," Brad said. "You seemed really interested in it. Do you know anything about music?" Marcus felt his face get warm. He did not like the way Brad was looking at him, like he was making fun of him. "I know a little bit about music, sir." "A little bit?" Brad laughed and looked at his friends. "Come on, Marcus. We heard you humming classical music. That's pretty fancy for a janitor, don't you think?" The other executives laughed too. Marcus felt smaller and smaller under their stares. He wanted to just finish his work and go home to Emma, but these men were blocking his way. "You know what I think?" Brad said, his voice getting louder. "I think our janitor here believes he's some kind of musician. What do you say, Marcus? Can you actually play piano, or do you just like to pretend?" Marcus did not know what to say. If he said yes, they would probably laugh at him more. If he said no, he would be lying. Either way, he could tell this was not going to end well. "I used to play a little bit," Marcus said quietly, hoping they would leave him alone. "A little bit?" Brad shouted, making his friends laugh even harder. Guys, our janitor used to play piano. This is perfect. Brad turned toward the conference room, where a few other party guests were still talking and finishing their drinks. Hey everyone, he called out. Come here. You have to see this. More people started gathering around. Marcus felt his heart beating fast. He did not like being the center of attention, especially not like this. These people were all successful and important, and he was just the janitor in his old uniform. Our friend Marcus here is a piano player, Brad announced to the growing crowd. He was just telling us how he used to play music. I think we should give him a chance to show off his skills. Some people in the crowd looked uncomfortable. They could tell that Brad was being mean and they did not want to be part of it. But others were curious or drunk enough to think it might be funny. Come on, Marcus, Brad said, putting his hand on Marcus's shoulder in a way that seemed friendly but felt threatening. Why don't you play something for us on that beautiful piano? I'm sure everyone would love to hear some music from our talented janitor. Marcus looked at the crowd of people staring at him. Some looked amused, some looked embarrassed, and a few looked genuinely interested. In the back of the group, he saw a woman in a dark blue dress who was watching everything with a serious expression. She looked older than the others and more important, but Marcus did not know who she was. I don't think that's a good idea, Marcus said softly. I should get back to my work. Oh, come on, Brad said loudly. Don't be shy. You were so interested in that piano last night. Here's your chance to show everyone what you can do. Unless you were just pretending to know about music. Brad's friends laughed and started encouraging Marcus to play. Some of the other people joined in, either because they thought it would be fun or because they did not want to look mean by walking away. Marcus felt trapped. If he walked away now, Brad would probably make fun of him even more. These people would always remember him as the janitor who pretended to know about music but was too scared to prove it. But if he tried to play and did badly, they would laugh at him and think he was foolish. Marcus looked at the piano sitting in the corner of the conference room. It was still beautiful and perfect, waiting for someone to bring it to life. He thought about all the years since he had played a real piano. He thought about Emma and how proud she was when she played her little keyboard at home. He thought about Lisa and how she used to love listening to him play. She always said that his music made her feel happy and peaceful. She said he had a gift that should not be wasted. Marcus made his decision. Okay, he said quietly. I'll play something. The crowd cheered and started moving toward the conference room. Brad was grinning like he had won a prize. He thought he was about to see Marcus embarrass himself in front of all these important people. Marcus set down his cleaning supplies and followed the crowd into the conference room. His hands were shaking a little, but not from fear. They were shaking because he was about to touch a real piano again after so many years. As Marcus walked toward the piano bench, he did not notice the woman in the dark blue dress watching him carefully. Her name was Sarah Chun, and she was the CEO of the entire company. She had been saying goodbye to some important clients when Brad started making his announcement. Sarah had grown up playing piano herself, and she recognized something in the way Marcus looked at the instrument. It was not the look of someone who was pretending or joking. It was the look of someone who truly understood music. Sarah stayed at the back of the crowd as Marcus sat down at the piano bench. She wanted to see what would happen next. Something told her that this night was about to become very different from what Brad Morrison expected. Marcus walked slowly toward the piano, feeling every eye in the room watching him. The conference room had become completely quiet except for the sound of his footsteps on the carpet. Even the people who had been laughing a moment ago were now silent, waiting to see what would happen. Marcus reached the piano bench and stopped. He looked down at the beautiful instrument that had called to him the night before. The keys seemed to glow under the soft lights. This was a much better piano than any he had played in college. It was the kind of piano that famous musicians used in great concert halls. For a moment, Marcus felt overwhelmed. What was he doing? He was just a janitor who cleaned offices and mopped floors. These people were successful executives and business leaders. They lived in a different world from him. They drove expensive cars and wore clothes that cost more than he made in a month. But then Marcus thought about Emma. He thought about how she practiced on her little keyboard every day after school, playing the simple songs he had taught her. He thought about how her face lit up when she learned something new. Emma believed her father was the best piano player in the world, even though she had never heard him play anything more complicated than Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Marcus thought about his mother, who had worked so hard to pay for his piano lessons when he was young. She had believed in his talent even when they had no money. She used to sit and listen to him practice, smiling proudly even when he made mistakes, and Marcus thought about Lisa, beautiful, kind Lisa, who had loved listening to him play. She used to say that music was the language of the heart, and that Marcus spoke that language better than anyone she knew. Lisa had encouraged him to follow his dreams, to become the musician he was meant to be. All of these people had believed in him. They had seen something special in his music, something worth supporting and loving. Maybe it was time for Marcus to believe in himself again, even if it was just for a few minutes. Marcus sat down on the piano bench and adjusted it to the right height. The crowd behind him was still quiet, but he could feel their attention like heat on his back. Some of them were expecting him to fail. Others were just curious. A few might even be hoping he would succeed. Marcus placed his hands gently on the keys without pressing them down. The feel of the smooth keys under his fingers brought back a flood of memories. He remembered hours of practice, learning scales, and exercises. He remembered the joy of finally mastering a difficult piece. He remembered the feeling of music flowing through him like water through a river. It had been 8 years since Marcus had played a real piano. 8 years since he had sat at a bench like this and let music pour out of his heart through his hands. In that time, he had become a different person. He had learned about responsibility and sacrifice. He had learned about love that was bigger than himself. He had learned about strength he never knew he had. Marcus chose the piece he would play. It was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, one of the most beautiful pieces ever written for piano. It was also one of the hardest pieces Marcus had ever learned. He had spent months practicing it in college, working on every note until it was perfect. The Nocturne was a piece about night and dreams, about beauty and sadness, about hope and loss. It was the perfect piece for this moment, for this night, for everything Marcus had been through in the past 8 years. Marcus took a deep breath and placed his fingers on the keys. Behind him he could hear someone whisper, but he did not pay attention to the words. He was thinking about the music now, feeling it build inside him like pressure in a dam that was about to break. Marcus pressed the first notes, and the room was filled with the pure, clear sound of the piano. The notes rang out like silver bells, each one perfect and clean. Marcus felt the familiar thrill of creating music, of taking silence and turning it into something beautiful. The opening of the Nocturne was gentle and questioning, like someone calling softly in the darkness. Marcus's fingers moved over the keys with the confidence of someone who had played this piece hundreds of times. Even after 8 years, the music was still there in his hands, waiting to be released. As Marcus continued to play, something amazing happened. The nervous janitor in the old uniform seemed to disappear, and in his place sat a true musician. His back straightened, his breathing became steady, and his face took on the focused, peaceful expression of someone completely absorbed in their art. The music began to build, becoming more complex and emotional. Marcus's left hand played the deep, steady bass notes while his right hand danced over the melody. The two parts wove together like dancers, sometimes close together, sometimes far apart, but always in perfect harmony. Behind Marcus, the crowd was completely silent now. Even Brad Morrison had stopped smirking. People who had come expecting to see a janitor embarrass himself were witnessing something they had never expected. The performance of a lifetime. Marcus was no longer aware of the crowd or the room or anything except the music. His fingers found every note without hesitation, as if they had been waiting 8 years for this moment. The melody soared and dipped, whispered and sang, told stories of love and loss and hope that everyone in the room could understand without words. The Nocturne had a section in the middle where the melody became more urgent and passionate. Marcus played it with feeling that came from deep inside him, from all the nights he had worked while others slept, from all the times he had sacrificed his own dreams for Emma's future, from all the love he had given without expecting anything in. Return. As the music reached its climax, Marcus felt tears on his cheeks. He was not sad, he was overwhelmed by the beauty of the moment, by the joy of making music again, by the feeling of being completely himself for the first time in years. The piece began to wind down, becoming gentle and peaceful again. Marcus played the final phrases with tender care, like someone saying goodbye to a dear friend. Each note was precious, each moment was a gift. When Marcus played the last note, he let it ring in the air until it faded completely into silence. Only then did he take his hands away from the keys and remember where he was. The conference room was absolutely quiet. Marcus could not hear breathing or footsteps or even the sound of the air conditioning. For a moment, he wondered if everyone had left while he was playing. Then Marcus heard something that made his heart skip a beat. Someone was clapping. It was slow, steady applause, the kind that comes from deep appreciation rather than politeness. Marcus turned around on the piano bench to see who was clapping. It was the woman in the dark blue dress, the one who had been standing at the back of the crowd. She was still there, and she was crying. Tears were running down her face as she applauded, and her eyes were bright with emotion. One by one, other people in the room began to clap as well. The applause grew louder and more enthusiastic as more people joined in. Some of the executives who had been smiling meanly before now looked ashamed of themselves. Others looked amazed, as if they could not believe what they had just heard. Marcus stood up from the piano bench, feeling dizzy with emotion and disbelief. The crowd was applauding him, not making fun of him, not laughing at him, but showing genuine appreciation for his music. It was something he had dreamed about for years, but never thought would happen again. Brad Morrison was standing near the front of the crowd, but he was not clapping. His face was red with embarrassment and anger. This was not how his joke was supposed to end. Marcus was supposed to fail and look foolish, not succeed and make Brad look like a bully, but Marcus was not thinking about Brad anymore. He was looking at all the faces in the crowd, seeing surprise and respect and even admiration. For 8 years, these kinds of people had walked past him in the hallways without seeing him. Tonight, they had finally heard his voice. The applause continued for what felt like forever. Marcus stood beside the piano, overwhelmed by the response to his performance. He had not expected this kind of reaction. In his wildest dreams, he had imagined that maybe a few people would think his playing was okay. But this was something much more powerful. People in the crowd were not just clapping politely. They were clapping with real feeling, the way audiences clapped for professional musicians at concerts. Some people had tears in their eyes. Others were shaking their heads in amazement, as if they could not believe what they had just heard. An older man in an expensive stepped forward from the crowd. Marcus recognized him as one of the senior executives who sometimes worked late. The man had silver hair and kind eyes, and he looked at Marcus with genuine respect. "That was extraordinary," the man said, his voice full of emotion. "I have heard professional pianists who could not play with that much feeling. Where did you learn to play like that?" Marcus felt his face get warm. He was not used to being the center of attention, especially not positive attention from people. "Like this. I studied music in college, sir." But that was a long time ago. "College?" another person in the crowd asked. "Which college?" Marcus hesitated. He was embarrassed to talk about his past, about the dreams he had given up. But these people seemed genuinely interested, not like they were making fun of him. "Juilliard," Marcus said quietly. "I went to Juilliard School of Music in New York." A murmur went through the crowd. Everyone knew that Juilliard was one of the most famous music schools in the world. Only the most talented musicians were accepted there. The fact that Marcus had studied at Juilliard changed everything about how these people saw him. "Juilliard?" Brad Morrison said from somewhere in the crowd. His voice sounded shocked and angry. "You went to Juilliard? How did you end up working as a janitor?" Marcus felt the old pain rise up in his chest. This was the question he had been afraid of, the one that would force him to talk about the worst time in his life. But looking at the faces around him, he saw that most people were not asking out of meanness. They were asking because they truly wanted to understand. "Life happened," Marcus said simply. "Sometimes things don't work out the way you plan." The woman in the dark blue dress stepped forward. She had stopped clapping, but her eyes were still bright with tears. There was something about her that seemed different from the others, more serious, more important. "What piece were you playing?" she asked. Her voice was gentle but strong, the voice of someone used to being listened to. "Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major," Marcus replied. "Opus 9, number 2, the woman nodded slowly. "I thought so. It's one of my favorite pieces. My piano teacher made me learn it when I was young, but I never played it with the kind of emotion." "You just showed us," Marcus was surprised. This elegant, obviously successful woman had studied piano too. It made him feel a little less alone, a little less like he was the only person in the room who understood music. "You have a gift," the woman continued. "Real talent like yours should not be hidden away. Music like that needs to be shared with the world." Other people in the crowd began to agree. They started asking Marcus questions about his musical background, about what other pieces he could play, about why he had stopped performing. For the first time in 8 years, Marcus found himself talking about music with people who appreciated it. Marcus told them about his childhood, how his mother had saved money for piano lessons. He told them about his years at Juilliard, studying with famous teachers and performing in recitals. He told them about his dreams of becoming a professional pianist, of playing in concert halls and recording albums. But Marcus did not tell them about Lisa or Emma. That part of his story was too personal, too painful to share with strangers. Instead, he just said that family responsibilities had forced him to leave school and find steady work. As Marcus talked, he could see the crowd's attitude toward him changing completely. They no longer saw him as just the janitor who cleaned their offices. They saw him as a talented musician who had somehow ended up in the wrong place. Some of them looked sad, as if they understood that Marcus had given up something precious. A young woman in the crowd raised her hand. "Would you play something else?" she asked. "Something different?" Marcus looked back at the piano. He had not planned to play more than one piece, but the crowd seemed genuinely interested. And if he was honest with himself, he did not want this moment to end. It had been so long since he had felt like a musician instead of just a janitor. "What would you like to hear?" Marcus asked. "Something happy," the young woman said. "Something that makes you smile." Marcus thought for a moment, then smiled himself. He knew exactly what to play. He sat back down at the piano bench and placed his hands on the keys. This time, Marcus chose a piece by Mozart, a bright, cheerful sonata that sparkled like sunlight on water. It was completely different from the Chopin Nocturne, full of joy and energy instead of gentle sadness. Marcus's fingers danced over the keys, playing the quick light notes that made the music sound like laughter. This piece was more technically difficult than the Nocturne, requiring fast finger work and perfect timing. But Marcus played it flawlessly, as if he had been practicing it every day for the past 8 years. The crowd listened with delight as the music filled the room. Some people started smiling and nodding along with the rhythm. The Mozart piece was the kind of music that made everyone feel happy, the kind that reminded people why they loved being alive. When Marcus finished the Mozart, the applause was even louder than before. People were calling out requests for more pieces. Someone asked for Bach, another person wanted Beethoven. Marcus felt like he was giving a real concert, not just playing for a group of business executives who had started out making fun of him. Marcus played 3 more pieces that night. Each one was different, classical, romantic, modern, showing the full range of his ability and knowledge. With each piece, the crowd grew more amazed and more appreciative. By the time Marcus played his final piece, word had spread throughout the building. Security guards, cleaning staff, and even some executives who had left the party early came back to listen. The conference room was packed with people, all of them focused on the man at the piano who had turned an ordinary Friday night into something magical. Marcus's last piece was another Chopin nocturne, this one even more beautiful and complex than the first. As he played, Marcus thought about how strange life was. A few hours ago, he had been just another invisible worker, someone that these people walked past without seeing. Now he was performing for them, sharing his most precious gift, being appreciated for who he really was inside. When the final notes faded away, the applause went on for several minutes. People were standing now, giving Marcus the kind of ovation that professional performers received. Some people were crying, others were cheering, and everyone was clapping as hard as they could. Marcus stood up from the piano bench one last time and looked out at the crowd. He saw faces that had been transformed by music, people who would never think about him the same way again. He had given them something beautiful, and in return they had given him back his identity as a musician. But even in this moment of triumph, Marcus knew that tomorrow night he would be back to cleaning offices and emptying trash cans. This had been a wonderful experience, but it did not change his real life. He still had bills to pay and a daughter to support. He was still just a janitor who happened to be able to play piano, or so Marcus thought. He had no idea that one person in the crowd was already making plans that would change everything about his future. Sarah Chen stood at the back of the crowd, wiping tears from her eyes with a tissue. As the CEO of Meridian Corporation, she was used to being in control of her emotions. She made tough business decisions every day without showing weakness or sentiment. But tonight, listening to Marcus play, she could not stop the tears from flowing. Sarah had grown up in a musical family. Her parents had immigrated from Taiwan when she was very young, and they had worked hard to give her every opportunity they never had. Piano lessons were one of the first things they saved money for, even when they were struggling to pay rent. On their small apartment. As a child, Sarah had been a good piano student. She practiced every day after school and performed in recitals. Her parents had dreamed that she might become a professional musician, but Sarah was more interested in business and technology. She had stopped taking piano lessons when she went to college, much to her parents' disappointment. Now, at 45 years old, Sarah was one of the most successful businesswomen in the country. She had built Meridian Corporation from a small startup into a billion-dollar company. She lived in a beautiful house, drove expensive cars, and had everything that money could buy. But she had not touched a piano in over 10 years. Listening to Marcus play reminded Sarah of what she had lost when she stopped making music. She remembered the joy of creating something beautiful, the satisfaction of mastering a difficult piece, the way music could express feelings that words could never capture. But more than that, Sarah recognized something special in Marcus's playing. She had heard many professional pianists over the years, at concerts, at charity events, at business functions. Some of them were technically perfect but emotionally cold. Others had feeling but lacked skill. Marcus had both technical mastery and deep emotional connection to the music. That combination was rare and precious. As the applause finally died down and people began to leave the conference room, Sarah stayed behind. She watched Marcus carefully put the piano bench back in its proper place and gently close the piano lid. Even in these small actions, she could see his respect and love for the instrument. Most of the crowd had scattered now, going back to their offices or heading home. Brad Morrison had left early, clearly embarrassed by how his cruel joke had backfired. The other young executives had followed him, whispering among themselves about what they had just witnessed. Sarah waited until the room was nearly empty before approaching Marcus. He was standing beside the piano, looking lost and overwhelmed. The confident musician who had just performed 5 beautiful pieces was gone, replaced again by the shy janitor in the worn uniform. "Excuse me," Sarah said gently. "Marcus, isn't it?" Marcus looked up, surprised that someone was still talking to him. Most people had already said their thank yous and moved on. He did not recognize the woman in the dark blue dress, but he could tell from the way she carried herself that she was important. "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied politely. "Is there something you need?" I should probably get back to my cleaning duties. Sarah felt her heart break a little at his words. Here was a man with extraordinary talent, worried about getting back to mopping floors and emptying trash cans. It seemed wrong on so many levels. I'm Sarah Chun, she said, extending her hand. I'm the CEO of Meridian Corporation. Marcus's eyes widened in shock. He had seen Sarah's picture in the lobby, but he had never imagined he would actually meet her. She was one of the most powerful people in the business world, and he was just a night janitor. I'm sorry, Miss Chun, Marcus stammered, shaking her hand nervously. I didn't know you were here. I hope it was okay that I played the piano. I know I'm not supposed to touch the equipment, but they asked me to play, and I didn't want to be rude. Marcus, Sarah interrupted gently, you have nothing to apologize for. What you did tonight was extraordinary. I haven't been moved by music like that in years. Marcus looked confused. He could not understand why the CEO of the company would care about his piano playing. In his mind, there was a huge distance between successful people like Sarah and working people like him. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, Sarah continued, about going to Juilliard, about how life didn't work out the way you planned. I'd like to hear more of your story, if you're willing to share it, Marcus hesitated. He was not comfortable talking about personal things with someone so important. But there was something in Sarah's eyes that made him feel safe. She was not asking out of curiosity or pity. She genuinely seemed to care. It's not a very interesting story, Miss Chun, Marcus said. I made some choices, and this is where I ended up. I'm grateful for the job, it pays the bills and has good health insurance. But you're clearly capable of so much more, Sarah said. The way you played tonight, that wasn't just talent. That was artistry. That was the work of someone who has dedicated their life to music. Marcus looked down at his hands. These were the same hands that had just created beautiful music, but they were also the hands that cleaned toilets and scrubbed floors every night. It was hard for him to see himself the way Sarah was describing. I have a daughter, Marcus said quietly. Emma, she's 8 years old, and she's the most important thing in my life. Everything I do is for her. The music, that's just something from my past. Sarah felt tears coming to her eyes again. She was beginning to understand the sacrifice that Marcus had made. He had given up his dreams and his career to take care of his child. It was noble and heartbreaking at the same time. Does Emma know about your musical background? Sarah asked. Marcus smiled for the first time since they had started talking. She knows I play a little bit. I taught her some simple songs on a keyboard I bought her. She loves music, just like her father did at that age. Like her father still does, Sarah corrected gently. Marcus, what I heard tonight wasn't the playing of someone who used to love music. It was the playing of someone who still lives and breathes music, even if life has forced him to express it differently. Marcus did not know what to say. It had been so long since anyone had talked to him about music as if it mattered. His coworkers at the cleaning company did not know about his background. His neighbors were kind but simple people who did not understand classical music. Even Mrs. Chun, who watched Emma, thought Marcus's humming was just a nice habit. I want to ask you something, Sarah said, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. If you could do anything with your life, anything at all, what would it be? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. It was a question he had stopped asking himself years ago because the answer was too painful to think about. I would want to teach music, Marcus said finally. And maybe perform sometimes in small venues. I would want to help other people discover the joy of making music, the way my teachers helped me when I was young. Sarah nodded slowly. This was exactly the answer she had hoped to hear. It told her that Marcus was not bitter about his past or unrealistic about his future. He still had dreams, but they were dreams about sharing his gift with others, not about becoming rich and famous. Marcus, Sarah said, I'd like to make you an offer. But before I do, I want you to know that I'm not doing this out of pity or because I feel sorry for you. I'm doing it because I believe the world needs more people like you, people who can create beauty and share it with others. Marcus looked at her with confusion and hope. He could not imagine what kind of offer the CEO of a major corporation could make to a janitor, but something in her voice made his heart beat faster. "What kind of offer?" Marcus asked quietly. Sarah smiled. It was the first time she had smiled all evening, and it transformed her face completely. For a moment, she looked less like a powerful executive and more like someone who had just discovered a wonderful secret. "I'll tell you about it," Sarah said. "But not here, not tonight. You've had enough surprises for one evening. Can you meet me in my office on Monday morning? Say 10 o'clock? Marcus felt dizzy. The CEO was asking him to come to her office. He had never been in an executive office before, let alone the CEO's office. "But I work nights," Marcus said. "I sleep during the day." "Take Monday off," Sarah said. "I'll make sure you're paid for." "The time. This is important, Marcus. More important than you know." Marcus nodded, still not really believing this was happening. A few hours ago, he had been just another invisible worker. Now the most powerful person in the company was asking to meet with him privately. "Thank you, Miss Chun," Marcus said. "I'll be there." Sarah shook his hand again, and this time she held it a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you, Marcus. Thank you for reminding me why music matters." As Sarah walked away, Marcus stood alone in the conference room with the piano. He looked at the instrument that had changed everything for him tonight. Tomorrow he would go back to being a janitor, but something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in 8 years, Marcus felt like the future might hold possibilities he had never dared to imagine. Saturday and Sunday passed slowly for Marcus. He tried to go about his normal routine, but he could not stop thinking about what had happened Friday night and what Sarah Chun might want to discuss with him on Monday morning. Marcus spent Saturday with Emma, as he always did. They went to the park where she played on the swings while he pushed her high into the air. They went to the library where Emma picked out 3 new books about animals. They had lunch at their favorite diner where Emma ordered pancakes with extra syrup, but even during these happy moments with his daughter, Marcus felt distracted. Emma noticed that her father seemed different, quieter than usual. When she asked him what was wrong, Marcus just smiled and told her that Daddy was thinking about work. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Marcus sat at her little keyboard and played softly. The keys felt tiny under his fingers after playing the grand piano, but he was grateful for any chance to make music. As he played, he thought about the feeling of performing for an audience again, of seeing people moved by his music. Mrs. Chun, his elderly neighbor, knocked on the door around 9 o'clock. She often came over on Saturday nights to check on Marcus and Emma. She was a kind woman who had helped Marcus so much over the years, watching Emma when he worked and never asking for much money in return. "You seem different tonight, Mrs. Chun," observed as they sat in Marcus's small living room drinking tea. "Something happened at work?" Marcus hesitated. He had not told anyone about Friday night's events. It seemed too strange, too unbelievable. Who would believe that the CEO of a major corporation had cried listening to a janitor play piano? "Something unusual happened," Marcus admitted. "I might have a meeting with someone important at work on Monday. Mrs. Chen nodded wisely. She had always believed that Marcus was capable of more than cleaning offices. "Good things come to good people," she said. "You work hard and you take care of Emma. You deserve some good luck." Marcus smiled at her simple faith in him. If only it were that easy, if good things really did come to good people just because they deserved them. But Marcus had learned that life was more complicated than that. Meanwhile, across the city in her luxury penthouse apartment, Sarah Chun was having a very different kind of weekend. She had spent most of Saturday morning on the phone with her assistant, asking her to research everything she could find about Marcus Williams. The information Sarah received was both fascinating and heartbreaking. Marcus had indeed attended Juilliard School of Music on a full scholarship. His professors had written glowing recommendations, calling him one of the most talented students they had ever taught. He had won several competitions and performed in prestigious venues in New York, but then the record showed a sudden change. In his third year at Juilliard, Marcus had withdrawn from school. The official reason was listed as family emergency, but there were no details about what had happened. Sarah's assistant had also found some newspaper articles from that time. One was about a car accident that had killed a young woman named Lisa Martinez. The article mentioned that she had been pregnant and that the baby had survived. Another article, published several months later, was about a scholarship fund established in Lisa's memory at the elementary school where she had worked as a teacher. Sarah began to understand what had happened to Marcus. He had lost his girlfriend in a tragic accident but had gained a daughter. At 26 years old, he had chosen to leave his promising musical career to raise his child alone. Sarah also discovered that Marcus had no family to help him. His mother had died when he was in college and he had no siblings. Lisa's family had apparently not been involved in Emma's life. Marcus had been truly alone, trying to figure out how to be a father while dealing with his own grief. The more Sarah learned about Marcus's story, the more impressed she became with his character. Many young men in his situation might have given the baby up for adoption or asked others to raise her. Marcus had sacrificed everything to keep his daughter and give her the best life he could. Sarah spent Sunday morning walking through her own house, looking at her expensive furniture and artwork. She had everything that money could buy, but she realized that Marcus had something she did not have: the satisfaction of knowing he had made the right choice, even when it was the hardest choice. Sunday afternoon, Sarah drove to the building where Marcus worked. She used her key card to get inside, telling the security guard that she needed to check on something in her office. But instead of going to her office, Sarah went to the 10th floor conference room where Marcus had played piano. The room had been cleaned and put back to its normal business setup. The round tables with white tablecloths were gone, replaced by the long wooden conference table and leather chairs. But the piano was still there in the corner, waiting silently for someone to bring it to life again. Sarah sat down at the piano bench and lifted the lid. She placed her fingers on the keys and tried to remember the pieces she had learned as a child. Her playing was rusty and uncertain, nothing like Marcus's beautiful performance. But as she played, Sarah felt a connection to something she had lost years ago: the simple joy of making music. Sarah played for about an hour, working through scales and simple pieces until her fingers began to remember what they were supposed to do. It felt good to make music again, even badly. It reminded her of why she had loved piano lessons when she was young. Before business and success had taken over her life. As Sarah played, she thought about Marcus and Emma. She imagined them in their small apartment, maybe sitting together at Emma's little keyboard. She pictured Marcus teaching his daughter the same pieces that his own mother had paid for him to learn so many years ago. Sarah made her decision that afternoon, sitting at the piano where Marcus had performed his miracle. She was going to offer Marcus much more than just a better job. She was going to give him a chance to return to the music. That was clearly still the center of his soul. Monday morning came quickly. Sarah arrived at her office early and spent an hour preparing for her meeting with Marcus. She had her assistant clear her schedule for the entire morning. She wanted to have plenty of time to explain her offer and answer Marcus's questions. At exactly 10 o'clock, Marcus knocked on Sarah's office door. When she called for him to come in, he entered slowly, looking around in amazement at the elegant office with its floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive furniture. Marcus was wearing the best clothes. He owned a simple button-down shirt and dress pants that he had bought for Emma's school events. They were clean and pressed, but obviously not expensive. Sarah could see that he had made an effort to look professional, even though he clearly felt out of place in her luxurious office. "Please sit down," Sarah said, gesturing to a comfortable chair across from her desk. "Can I get you some coffee?" "Water?" "Coffee would be nice, thank you," Marcus replied, his voice nervous but polite. Sarah poured coffee for both of them from an elegant silver service. As she handed Marcus his cup, she noticed that his hands were shaking slightly. She realized how intimidating this meeting must be for him. "Marcus," Sarah began, "I want to start by thanking you again for Friday night. Your performance was truly extraordinary." But I also want you to know that I've spent the weekend learning more about your background. Marcus's face went pale. He had not expected Sarah to investigate his past. He wondered what she had found out and whether it would change her opinion of him. I know about Juilliard, Sarah continued gently. I know about Lisa and Emma. I know about the choices you made and the sacrifices you've made over the past 8 years. Marcus set down his coffee cup because his hands were shaking too much to hold it steady. Miss Chun, if this is about my work performance, I can assure you that my personal situation has never interfered with my duties. I've never missed a shift, and I always complete my assignments. Sarah felt her heart break at his words. Even now, facing the CEO of the company, Marcus's first concern was protecting his job so he could continue to provide for Emma. Marcus, Sarah said softly, you're not in trouble. You're not here because of any problem with your work. You're here because I believe I can offer you something that will change your life and Emma's life for the better. Marcus looked at her with confusion and hope. He could not imagine what kind of offer the CEO could make that would change his life, but something in Sarah's voice made him believe that this meeting might be the answer to prayers he had been afraid to pray. Sarah stood up from behind her desk and walked to the large windows that overlooked the city. For a moment she was quiet, choosing her words carefully. Marcus sat in his chair, waiting nervously for her to speak. Marcus, Sarah began, turning back to face him, I've been thinking about what our company needs. We're successful in business, but we've lost something important along the way. We've forgotten about the human side of what we do. We've forgotten about beauty and art and the things that make life meaningful. Marcus listened carefully, but he still did not understand where this was leading. Sarah continued, I want to create a new position in our company, Director of Arts and Culture. This person would be responsible for organizing cultural events, managing our corporate sponsorships for local arts programs, and helping to bring music and art into our workplace. Marcus felt his heart start to beat faster. Was Sarah suggesting what he thought she was suggesting? The position would pay $80,000 a year to start, Sarah said, watching Marcus's face carefully, plus full benefits, health insurance, and a retirement plan. There would also be opportunities for travel to arts events and conferences. Marcus's mouth fell open. $80,000 was almost 4 times what he made as a janitor. With that kind of money, he could move Emma to a better neighborhood, maybe even buy a small house. Emma could take proper piano lessons with a good teacher. She could go to college without worrying about money. But Miss Chun, Marcus said, his voice shaking, I don't have any experience in arts administration. I don't know anything about running corporate programs. Sarah smiled. You have something much more valuable than experience, Marcus. You have passion. You understand music from the inside. You know what it feels like to create something beautiful and to share it with others. That's what we need. Sarah walked back to her desk and picked up a folder. I've already spoken with our board of directors about this position. They're excited about the possibility of expanding our cultural programs. And after what happened Friday night, word has spread throughout the company about your musical abilities. People are talking about how your performance moved them. Marcus could hardly believe what he was hearing. You're offering me a job? A real job in an office? I'm offering you more than a job, Marcus. I'm offering you a chance to return to the world of music. As our Director of Arts and Culture, you would occasionally perform at company events. You would work with professional musicians and artists. You would help other people discover the joy of music. Sarah opened the folder and pulled out several papers. I've also been in touch with the local symphony orchestra. They're always looking for talented musicians to participate in their community outreach programs. If you're interested, I could arrange for you to audition for their substitute pianist position. Marcus felt tears coming to his eyes. The symphony orchestra had been one of his dreams when he was a student at Juilliard. The idea that he might actually have a chance to play with professional musicians again seemed impossible. There's one more thing, Sarah said gently. The company has a scholarship fund for employees' children. Emma would be eligible for full tuition assistance for private school and later for college. We also have partnerships with several excellent music programs for young people. At the mention of Emma, Marcus could no longer hold back his tears. Everything Sarah was offering, the job, the money, the opportunities, all of it meant that Emma could have the kind of future he had always dreamed of giving her. "Why?" Marcus asked through his tears. "Why are you doing this for me?" Sarah sat down across from Marcus and looked directly into his eyes. "Because Friday night you reminded me of something I had forgotten. You reminded me that there are still people in the world who care more about beauty than about money, more about giving than about taking. Your music touched everyone who heard it, Marcus. That's a gift that should be shared, not hidden away." Sarah paused, and when she spoke again, her own voice was emotional. "And because I see in you the kind of person I want our company to support. You've shown incredible strength and character in raising Emma alone. You've sacrificed your own dreams to give her a better life. Now I want to give you both the chance to have everything you deserve." Marcus wiped his eyes with the tissue Sarah handed him. "What about my job as a janitor? I can't just quit without notice. Mr. Rodriguez has been good to me." "I've already spoken with the cleaning company," Sarah said. "They understand that this is an opportunity you can't pass up. They'll hire a replacement, and you can start your new position next Monday if you accept." Marcus looked out the window at the city below. Somewhere out there, Emma was at school, probably sitting in math class or reading a book. She had no idea that her father was being offered a chance that would change both their lives forever. "Can I ask you something, Miss Chun?" Marcus said. "Of course. Do you really believe I can do this job? I've been cleaning offices for 8 years. I'm not sure I remember how to work in a professional environment." Sarah leaned forward in her chair. "Marcus, you've been surviving and thriving as a single father for 8 years. You've balanced work and parenting, managed finances on a very tight budget, and somehow maintained your love of music through it all. If you can do all that, you can certainly handle an office job." Sarah stood up and walked to a small piano that sat in the corner of her office. Marcus had not noticed it when he came in, but now he could see that it was a beautiful upright piano, smaller than the grand piano from Friday night, but still elegant and well-maintained. "This was my grandmother's piano," Sarah said, running her hand over the smooth wood. "I had it moved to my office last weekend after hearing you play. I realized that I had been missing music in my life, just like our company had been missing the human touch that art provides." Sarah sat down at the piano bench and played a simple melody. Her playing was hesitant and unpracticed, but there was genuine feeling in it. "I want to start taking lessons again," she said. "I want to remember what it feels like to create music instead of just consuming it." Sarah turned back to Marcus. "That's another part of your job if you want it. I'd like you to give piano lessons to employees who are interested. We could set up a small music room in the building, maybe offer lessons during lunch hours or after work. What do you think?" Marcus thought about all the people he had seen in the building over the years, stressed executives, tired office workers, young people just starting their careers. He imagined some of them discovering the joy of making music, finding a way to express themselves beyond spreadsheets and presentations. "I think it sounds wonderful," Marcus said. Sarah walked back to her desk and picked up a contract. "I've had our legal department draw up an employment agreement. Take your time reading it over. If you have any questions or want to negotiate any terms, just let me know." Marcus took the contract with shaking hands. The official letterhead, the legal language, the salary figure in black and white, it all made the offer feel real and official. "Miss Chun," Marcus said, "I don't know how to thank you. This is more than I ever dreamed possible." "Don't thank me yet," Sarah said with a smile. "Wait until you see how much work this job is going to be. We have a lot of cultural programs to develop, and I have big plans for expanding our arts initiatives." Marcus laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. "I'm not afraid of hard work. And I'm definitely not afraid of working with music." Sarah extended her hand to shake Marcus's. "So, do we have a deal? Will you be our new Director of Arts and Culture?" Marcus stood up and shook her hand firmly. Yes, Miss Chun, I accept your offer. Wonderful, Sarah said. And please call me Sarah, we're colleagues now. As Marcus left Sarah's office that morning, he felt like he was walking in a dream. In the elevator going down, he looked at his reflection in the shiny doors. He still saw the same face, but somehow everything had changed. He was no longer just a janitor who used to play piano. He was a musician who was about to start a new career. Marcus could not wait to get home and tell Emma the news. He imagined her excitement when he explained that they could move to a better apartment, that she could take real piano lessons, that her daddy was going to be working with music again. That evening, Marcus sat Emma down at their little kitchen table and told her about his meeting with Miss Chun. Emma listened with wide eyes as her father explained about the new job, the better salary, and all the opportunities that were opening up for both of them. Does this mean you won't have to work at night anymore? Emma asked. That's right, Marcus said. I'll be home with you every evening. We can have dinner together, and I can help you with your homework. And you'll be able to play piano at work? Emma asked. Sometimes, Marcus said. And maybe I can teach other people to play piano too. Emma threw her arms around her father's neck. I'm so proud of you, Daddy. I always knew you were the best piano player in the world. Marcus hugged his daughter tight, feeling grateful beyond words. He thought about Lisa and wished she could see how Emma had grown up, how beautiful and smart and kind she had become. He thought about his mother and how proud she would be to know that her sacrifices for his music lessons had not been wasted after all.